folks another minute to join. And while we do that, I will introduce you to our next speaker. And Bob, if you are doing a PowerPoint, you look like you're somewhere great. If you're in a PowerPoint, feel free to share. We are going to be talking about advanced air mobility, and that's something that Secretary Lorenz had brought up in her speech earlier today, and we're excited to hear more about that. Here's our abstract. Kansas aircraft manufacturers have produced over 73% of general aviation aircraft in the world. The Kansas Transportation Division of Aviation leads strategic efforts to leverage the strengths of capital and logistics infrastructure to attract emerging aviation markets to Kansas. The advanced air mobility, AAM, sector includes urban air mobility, commercial supersonic, and uncrewed beyond line of sight operations. Kansas currently employs a prominent leadership role in these sectors and will remain as competitive as we are collectively engaged to remain. So speaker bio, Bob Brock. Hi, how are you doing today? He grew up in Kansas. He's an alumnus of Texas Christian University and has a master's degree from Webster University. An instrument-rated commercial fixed wing and helicopter instructor pilot, he now serves as the Director of Aviation and UAS for the Kansas Department of Transportation. In this role, he represents the state of Kansas on the FAA Advanced Aviation Advisory Committee, the NASA Advanced Air Mobility Working Group, and represents ASH as a lead participant for the FAA UAS Beyond program. Bob's primary focus is to safely integrate emerging technologies into the national airspace system that contribute to a safe and sustainable ecosystem of growth for aviation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob. Hi.
Hey guys, kind of a clumsy intro, so sorry for the malfunctions here, but we're getting there. Hey, I am actually on the road today doing exactly what we've been talking about. I love this conference. There's no more fun place for industry and academia and agencies to get together to talk about what does innovation really mean to us, and what does it mean to the state, and frankly, what does it mean to the planet? And we're doing so many things on a global scale right now that it's actually a little bit confusing sometimes as we talk about the local issues of passing a transportation plan and doing all the rest of it with FHWA and FAA and the whole world. It's an exciting time to be in transportation, and an especially exciting time to be in aviation. So some of the things, the purpose of my presentation today is to talk about primarily, I'm the Director of Aviation. Thank you, Lisa, for the a fairly extravagant introduction. That's very kind. Honestly, what we're doing right now that is unique is working hard to incorporate engineering infrastructure so that the state of Kansas is ready to catch business that wouldn't otherwise come to Kansas except by happenstance. And if there's one thing that I could tell you up front, I could probably tell you the entire presentation in 1 minute. And the entire presentation is there are states that are highly competitive going after each of the markets that represent emerging aviation technology. And we're either going to compete and capture those technologies and new markets, or we're not. And as we build infrastructure out, I believe our task at KDOT, it's a core mission of KDOT, that everything we do sets up the state and the central United States for success in transportation by providing that infrastructure piece that others may or may not have. So I see a ton of friends on the participant list. Doug Hohulin from Nokia. There's just a whole bunch of people that are doing things together. Rick Backlund and I hosted an event a few weeks ago that brought FHWA DOTs from our entire region together to talk about UAS technologies and some of the ways that we can leverage lessons learned on the best way to optimize that unmanned and uncrewed systems technologies for infrastructure support. So that's the political ad up front, but that is the entire brief. What I'm going to tell you up front is we're going to leverage our current strengths to actually go do high-speed way beyond imagination, innovation in a way that has mitigated risk that just makes sense to do things here in Kansas. So I am going to start a video. Those that were on the one of our last emerging technology activities out in Manhattan will recognize the video, but I never say the same thing twice. So let me see if we can share this bad boy. Oh, Lisa, give me screen sharing capability, please. So while we're working on that, our hot issue today is there are about 3 issues within advanced issues is not true. 3 categories of activity within the advanced air mobility sphere. Advanced air mobility basically can be boiled down as simply as what are the things that we either don't do today or that current policy doesn't allow us to do today from the FAA National Airspace Integration perspective. So Kansas and our team has the Kansas UAS Joint Task Force is a team of 44 companies and state agencies and universities that work together to shape what rulemaking should look like through the FAA. So as many of you are working on these engineering projects that are very cutting edge, they're not going to go anywhere until until the FAA allows that to participate within the national airspace. But in the meantime, Kansas is one of only 5 states that are allowed to do advanced air mobility things within the national airspace on behalf of the FAA to help them collect data so that they can use for rulemaking. So our 100% intent is to be the place that if somebody is going to invent something in aviation, that Kansas is the best place to test it. That's the best place to hire people that are already seasoned in aircraft manufacturing. They're already seasoned in the engineering functions of aerospace engineering and have a proven track record of making companies successful, and therefore would make more money longer and create those jobs that we so enthusiastically want to attract. So there's a ton of activity like that. All right, I think we should be able to share by now.
You are good to go, Bob.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. I talked to you about our strategy. Our strategy is the state of Kansas is already a global leader in aviation. I'm going to try.
When it comes to the 172, the way Cessna did it is in May of 1955, they took a Cessna 170B from the assembly line, went ahead and certified it, flew it for about 12 hours. Then they deregistered that 170B and registered it.
All right, I'm going to tell you what he's going to say because I want to keep your timeline straight. Right now, there is anyone in the audience that has done pilot training has flown a Cessna 172, perhaps one of the most prolific aircraft worldwide. And the lessons learned is that Kansas already does innovation. This aircraft is Cessna 172 number 1. Came off the assembly line, and many, many years ago, this gentleman purchased the aircraft just recently and did a ground up restoration. And this aircraft, for those that are involved in type certification or things that are getting the FAA to say this is a legal airplane, they took 12 flights. And in 1 month, that aircraft was certified and is now one of the most reliable aircraft worldwide. We can spell innovation. We know how to do that in the aviation fleet. Today, the Citation 10 is a good example of that. We started building the Citation 10 in 1990. It goes 0.935 Mach, which is nearly the speed of sound. Costs a little over $20 to $25 million. Since 1990, the state of Kansas has built 392 Citation 10s. Are a whole bunch of those aircraft living in Kansas? There are a handful. Did we build all of them and employ 91,000 people to build aircraft every day in Kansas based on that type of innovation? We absolutely did, and we're going to continue to do that. We talk about the Beechcraft Denali. This is brand new. Fast forward to right this minute. This aircraft goes into production next year. It is that engine is being built with additive manufacturing. So they're taking a 3D printer and building an aircraft engine for it. That results in a huge, huge competitive environment for a multi-billion-dollar industry that other states are actively going after. This video comes from the Dayton, Ohio Economic Development Function. And I'll tell you what they're focused on right this minute is advanced air mobility, flying cars, air taxis, there's lots of words from them. Urban air mobility is the subsector under advanced air mobility that we talked about earlier. I talked about 3 major sectors, and I'm going to kind of talk like a machine gun. There's 3 major sectors for advanced air mobility include urban air mobility, the flying cars that they're going after. It includes advanced UAS, unmanned systems operations that are beyond line of sight. And it also includes supersonic commercial aircraft operations. We're building, and each of the people that I show you today are active partners within the state of Kansas, except for Dayton, Ohio, to build these ecosystems so that anywhere in this state, we have 105 counties with 700 aircraft manufacturers across this state. Couldn't be a better place to build a new type of aircraft. So we're posturing to be able to be one of the very few sites in the country that you can flight test these activities. Our mantra is exactly the same. Our strategy for this activity mimics what Ohio is doing. I frankly think that they thought our idea was a good one, but that's just interstate competition, which is what we should all be doing. We want them to come to Kansas to do flight tests, leverage our engineering talent, leverage those people that know how to make aircraft companies successful. And then after they have their prototype built and they're accustomed to working here, and they finally fully realize the infrastructure, distribution channels, supply chain advantages that exist, they want to move here to live and manufacture long-term. That's where the Beechcrafts of the world came from. That's where the Cessnas of the world came from. And that's where Learjet came from. Each of them started somewhere else first and then came to Kansas. Every single state that's involved in aerospace manufacturing wants all of that manufacturing business. Kansas is no different than that. So I'm relying on you engineering talent and innovators within industry to partner with us to find those ways. What he just said was, we want them to come here to test and stay here to build. That is our job. So a few things we've done to facilitate that and make it a place that is unusual. This is a picture of Kansas. The report that they're going to see, I'll take the time to let you hear them. Please, somebody give me a thumbs up that you can hear the voice on this.
Facilities to help expedite the care of their patients.
Actually, I'm going to take a hot minute to just introduce this. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. No, let's let it go. Sprite is a company that does healthcare package delivery. This entire video is in Hutchinson and McPherson and Lyons, Kansas. Right now, this minute, this company is already partnered with this CEO and Chief Strategy Officer at Hutchinson Regional Medical Care Center. And that health center is looking at the mobility cost of moving lab tests and moving critical action healthcare issues from organization to organization to get the laboratory to be responsive. So a cancer patient comes into the Hutchinson Regional Hospital, they take their blood test, they send it off to the lab. Every one of your family and friends that have had cancer know that's going to be a 4 to 6 hour effort for them to get the lab test done, get you that custom-made treatment identified, and then give you that medication and you can be on your way. What we've since learned when we work with these regional health centers is that the test takes about 15 to 20 minutes. It's the van waiting in the driveway to get enough of those tests loaded up to be practical, to drive the 45 minutes to the lab, get all the tests done, and then send it back. That is the short factor. Sprite right now is operating in Kansas with the full intent to be the first company in the country to normalize getting that test, putting it in the drone, flying it directly to the lab, getting those answers back, and getting that person who's already sick and has no interest in being in a waiting room, get them treated and back out on the road and back to a place that is not the hospital. That saves them money. Today, Stormont Vail spends roughly $6 million a year on nothing but mobility of lab tests. Those little vans running all over the Stormont Vail system. This is going to revolutionize how we do healthcare in the state of Kansas. Let me see if I can turn that volume back up and see if you can hear what they're saying. What's fun, I want you to listen for, is these are local Kansas people that are seeing what this looks like when we do it.
Myself and the rest of our team is going to be very proud every time we look up and see a Sprite drone delivering something, knowing that we were on the cutting edge of something that is really going to be a game changer in medicine going forward.
Okay, we missed the my favorite nurse in Kansas. She is so excited about these kind of things. When I meet with people and ask the question, when is it time to invest in advanced technologies? One of the primary indicators is when major manufacturers get behind activities. Today, when we talk about advanced air mobility, we can't talk about that without looking at urban air mobility. This is an urban air mobility flying car. There is no pilot. It takes off from a helipad. You will click in the future, you'll click on your, in the near future, I will say, you will click on your Uber app and you're not going to know if it's going to be a car or an aircraft that's going to come meet you. In this scenario, this aircraft comes in, lands to a helipad, opens up the door automatically. You and your business partners climb in, the door shuts automatically, and it takes off and goes 250 knots to your next destination. So you could live in Salina and be doing efforts in Kansas City every day in an economical way. In Kansas, we talked about we want to be the test place. We also have a pragmatic strategy to engage our local populace through rural activity. These flying cars are going to start with cargo. This is the CEO of Beta Technologies, and that's a real aircraft behind him that does exactly what we just talked about. What I want to show you is that Beta and UPS are already partners working in Kansas doing these kind of activities, and their intent is to do what we just talked about, normalize regional package delivery. There's not a good place to test that today. Kansas is building that as we speak in cooperation with partnerships through the Beyond program with the FAA and in cooperation with these industry partners. This is a news report from CNBC that talks about those kind of things. Now here's the tie. Cessna Citation 10 in 1990, engineers talking to the typical engineering conference would say, I'm about to build an aircraft that flies almost Mach speed for 8 individuals that are privately owned to sell on the world market for $20+ million. Does that sound good? At that time, people would say that's too far out. There's no way I can necessarily embrace that because there's not a track record of that being a successful business model. Kansas people believe in aviation. Kansas companies invest in aviation and depend on it to keep us at the forefront of a competitive cutting edge. This is one of my favorite companies. This company is called Lilium. We talked about that vertical takeoff and landing. These are electric aircraft, but this is an exception. And the things I want you to take away from it, this is actually a jet that takes off vertically and flies out horizontally at almost 300 miles an hour. That is extraordinarily fast. Here's the takeaway I want you to see in this video. What's unusual about it is it's not a cartoon. This is not a prototype or this is a prototype. This is not a concept that's just graphically built with CGI. That's a flying aircraft. The last one was too. And so for people that are my age, looking at the Jetsons and growing up on that, this is about as close to the Jetsons as we're going to find today. And they are ready right now to get this done. Our job in Kansas is that we work with general aviation aircraft every day to get certification, like we talked about with that Cessna 172, for them to sign off and say, this is a safe aircraft. Kansas specializes in that. We're one of the world leaders in that. And if you fly around the world, you'll find 73% of the small airplanes in the world were built in Kansas. And I can show you that data later. I thought that was a marketing number, but that's a real deal. Flight test is a big bridge. We've talked about that numerous times because that's core to what we offer the aviation community that most other places do not. If you go do aircraft manufacturing in Detroit, Michigan, there's a lot of manufacturing available, but that is not a place to engage the FAA. Kansas is the place to do that. Here's a 30-second transition for you. Everything doesn't have to be an anti-gravity machine. The flying car, pretty far out, pretty breakthrough technology that has no necessary link to something that we're accustomed to. One of the things we're doing today, that same Cessna 172 that has hundreds and hundreds, probably many, many millions of flight hours proving itself, people like Textron are taking existing power plants and replacing them with an electric power plant. Doing that activity does a great deal to reduce our carbon footprint and also reduces our reliance on technologies that would be legacy. Today, Joby Aircraft is building one of those, they call them eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. Same kind of air taxi we talked about. Key takeaway, Joby is funded heavily by Toyota. This is not a garage band. These are folks that are building aircraft in a major way and have the backing to turn it into a global force. As you look at the regulatory environment for incorporating these flying taxis, one of the primary issues that people are concerned with are primarily, in this case, the sound and acoustic impact that's going to happen to the people below them. This gets into a bunch of engineering speak about how propellers make noise. Happy to walk you through that. That's a pretty straightforward deal, but we are accustomed today. If I was in your audience with you, I would say, raise your hand if you can tell me how many aircraft fly over the state of Kansas every 24 hours. The answer is a little over 3,500. That's a ton of aircraft compared to the number that you see. We might see one a week or 5 a week, but they all make a fairly predictable sound. If you could hear it on this, you'd find that the comparison is very strikingly different than that. And you can see it visually on the engineering diagram that it is just awfully quiet. Major win for policy. Is it okay to have a neighbor that does that? More to follow, but it won't be because they're too noisy. So there's a tremendous field to look at here. Now I'm going to see if I can crank up the volume because I think it's cool for this next part. If I can try to get out of that. There's only so many times you can watch an airplane fly by, right? Well, that's not really true for me. Okay, supersonic flight test. Supersonic flight test is the gateway to two things. Kansas manufacturers that build new airplanes. That's new jobs that don't exist here right now. The second thing it does is government contracts. The United States government does a great deal with supersonic activity. And if we can continue to keep that cycle going with them getting their aircraft from Kansas, that's a major win. The Supersonic Corridor that lies over Kansas, we designed here in KDOT Aviation, is designed to sustain an aircraft to fly Mach 3, 770 nautical miles with less than 2 Gs on the test equipment and on the test pilots until they run out of gas. This is the first place in the country you can test this. These guys are saying right now that they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars to prove that jet engine will be able to achieve Mach 5. They also have prepared with the United States Air Force. They've given them $60 million to prove that it's possible. And this is where we just talk about the supply chain and such. But I want to respect your timeline.
You don't understand what's actually happening until you get into flight. So that's something we're pushing for extremely quickly. We'll take a little bit more analysis risk to get into flight and learn where the actual problems of our system are.
We're excited to announce that the U.S. Air Force has selected Hermes to flight test quarter horse, the fastest aircraft in the world. This is a huge step forward in our journey to Mach 5 commercial flight.
This is a $60 million partnership that fully funds us to flight and demonstrates that our customers want what we're building.
In 9 short months, we designed, built, and tested our demonstrator engine, proving the possibilities. And now we're developing quarter horse right here in America's newest airplane factory.
Speed is everything at Hermes, and we're willing to bet on it. We will beat Boom to Mach 1.7 and Virgin Galactic to Mach 3. Race you there.
Okay, we'll stop it there. Big picture we talked about. Let's start with our strengths and make absolutely sure that we're working together as a unified team to present those strengths to the global market so that people that are doing engineering and infrastructure pieces to support new industries are ready to catch that business before other states that are in a hot competition to do it themselves. We're just exactly the right place to build these new kind of technologies. And we're going to be exactly as successful as we engage and compete. So with that, let me stop there and I'll work on unsharing and start shooting questions at me, Lisa.
All right, we have 1 minute left, but I will ask you a question and then we'll guide people over to the live feed if they have any. So you provided a lot of really interesting innovations that could occur. Is there any required state or federal legislation that isn't there yet to allow for this to occur? What do we need to do?
Oh my goodness, Lisa, that is such a huge answer in such a short time. The answer is yes. There are volumes of activity that we're deeply and heavily engaged in to, and I don't mean that in a passive way. We're actually on some of those leadership teams working with FAA and others to shape this industry so that we can actually have our rulemaking match the opportunity that's out there that still protects safety and still protects privacy. So those are awfully big issues. But yes, ma'am, there's a ton and a long ways to go. But one of our key partners, quite literally, is the FAA. And so when we say this is a big deal, this is important to manufacturing, it's important to new jobs, time to pull the trigger and say, yes, give us the reins for a short period and let us show you that it's feasible and safe. And then you decide whether we can keep doing it or not.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob, so much. And enjoy your time in Arizona. And folks, on to the next session. See y'all soon.
Let me give you 10 seconds. Let me give you a 2-second quick one.
Okay.
We just met with companies from Norway, Germany, and the United States yesterday that are looking for US manufacturing sites. So that's why I'm here in Arizona right now, to turn them on to the activity that we've got so that all of you can be part of that team. So thanks again for the time. Great to see you all again. Enjoy the conference. Cheers.